Hello everyone. Just a second. I need to get some water. I'm a few minutes late. 2 minutes, but still. I don't know if the chat is on. Live chat. So you can see. Can anybody comment so I see that it's working? No comment. Less people watching. Can anybody comment so I know that things are working as expected? Just good. Yeah, hi Naomi. So, hello everybody. So I hope people will start to join very soon. Yeah. And let's get started slowly. So I have here the cheese that I made this week, and we're gonna talk a little bit about them. So I have here the first one is a cashew and one that is almond based, and the other one is a big almond based cheese. So all of them, they smell very Koji like right now. That's another topic that I want to talk today. So let's start with those two guys here. Okay. Yeah, then you can also watch them. So first I want to talk about the ingredients. So now I have one cheese that is cashew based, one is almond based. So the almond, it's a bit firmer than the cashew, and some protein. So I couldn't do soy and coconut milk. If I only make soy, it won't be as tasty as it would with a nut based in like a cashew. Let me just get a knife. And then let's talk about those things. So some people were asking how did I make them. So this is an almond based cheese. I showed on the video on Instagram how you can actually you can see that the first one that I did, this one, it wasn't really firm. I couldn't really work the curds as I wish because I just did it at a lower temperature. And the cashew one, it's the easiest one to make when you are curdling it because it has a lot of starches, which almond doesn't have, and that way it gets firmer easier. About taste and texture, so cashew is, I find it a bit milder than if you compare, for example, with the almond. Almond has a little bit more punch, and that has to do with the protein. So when you're talking about a cheese, curds will be better because it retains much more water. So this cheese, which was in the beginning, I used 100 grams of almonds, and I got a cheese that is a bit more than 100 grams, but I also have 100 grams of pulp of the fibers of the almonds. That means that you actually just have the almond protein and fats here, and still, because of the structure of the network of the proteins here, you get about the same weight in cheese and in pulp. That means that with 100 grams of almonds, you get double. You have 100 grams of cheese plus 100 grams of pulp that you can use on baking or other ingredients. That means that you can really double the amount. And on cashew, which is basically the same size, but I added 150 grams of cashews, and then water. And then in the end, it was about the same weight in cheese wise, but I used 50 grams more cashews than I used in almonds, because almonds can give you a better structure. But still, and you can see that this cheese, you can't see it, sorry, you cannot see how that this cheese is actually softer and a bit more fragile than this cheese. This cheese is pretty can I so you can see it doesn't really bend that much compared to this one, which can bend a lot. And I can tell here that it's very soft, and it's making like it's releasing, it's becoming a bit softer because of the structure of the cashew nuts, because it contains a lot of starches. It's a different type of curd. And then I have this big guy here. So those two are the same, but this, you can see with the size, this was 200 grams of almonds that I made a milk, and then I add about 3. I publish the recipe in a few weeks, 1 or 2 weeks. But this one is, you can see it's much heavier, but it's very wet. For this one, I would rather do a brine or salt it better for a couple of days before I can actually eat it. With this small one, it dried much better. So that's another thing that it's gonna make a huge difference, as much as in dairy cheese. If you're curdling the cheese, is that then you need to care about how you're curdling, how you're pressing, what kind of pH and what kind of temperatures are you pressing the cheese, especially because they also contain fat, and the fats will also help or prevent water release. So there's a lot of things that you are gonna need to suddenly care about on vegan cheese. So this, you can almost compare this cheese to tofu, like I mentioned in one of the live streams, but because it's almond based and not soy based, it has a little bit more better mouthfeel. And you can see here something weird growing. That's because it's too wet at my room. This was too moist, and the koji starts to grow. So that's another topic we're going to talk today. So first, I mentioned briefly, just to a quick review about the 3 topics. The first one is to press the cheese. What kind of ingredients are you going to use? How much moisture it retains. And the third is how you're going to age it. And that has a lot to do with no extra culture, or you're adding some helpers that will help it to break down. So I haven't tried this one. What I'm trying to do with this guy, it tastes fine, is to get something like a grilled cheese or a feta type of cheese, something that you can use better than you would with a coconut based or other types of cheese. And most importantly, this is tasty. This is not because you added nutritional yeast. This is not because you added, I don't know, like sauerkraut juice or whatever they use to mimic flavors, cheese flavors. This is a fermented food. And if you think about miso paste, I don't know if you ever thought how miso paste are done. Miso is basically fermented soybeans with rice that is fermented for, or without rice that is fermented for a couple of months. Same with soy sauce. Soy sauce is even longer. And in the same way, you can think of cheese. Dairy cheese, you have a few weeks to a few months. You get also a lot of flavor. But if you make any recipe out there, it just tastes fine. If you just add the cultures, you make a curdled cheese or non-curdled cheese, and let it age for 2 months, it'll be, yeah, better, fine. But it won't have like, wow, that's a lot of umami, that's not a lot of flavor. On the other hand, I did it already that I had a dairy cheese, dairy milk cheese, and I think that time was a soy milk and a cashew based. And during that time, only with mesophilic cultures, I aged the three of them at exactly same conditions. And the dairy cheese from the beginning that tastes bland to 1 week, 7 days only, it was a huge difference. And the soybean cheese and the cashew based, it was a bit more acidic, and that's it. No more umami, no flavors. And the reason for that is because I learned when you have the bacteria you create enzymes, you create plus the yeast that will be promoted there, that will create a lot of flavors. You can use Ridgevelac or something, but in the end, it tends to taste a little bit like sourdough, and that's not cheese flavor. So Koji is not exactly the same flavor as dairy cheese, but it will create a lot of umami. That's what you want it to be. So this cheese, I just try it. I didn't. It was untouched before, and I try it now. It tastes pretty nice to my taste. But if you give it to somebody, it will be a bit yeasty like flavor. Lolek 9. My dog is going crazy here. So Lolek, say hello. No, he doesn't. So distractions apart. So that's where I want to get to. So it's a lot to unpack. I don't want to put everything out there, but I just want to give you some base to where I'm going right now, which is finding a balance to Curdled cheese that I can do it for years now, but it's not been so successful to develop the flavors I want. And that's why I never really talked about it. I only mentioned once or twice. I like this flavor, but then it's not exactly cheese. On the other hand, I'm starting to really feel like after trying enzymes and different things that this is actually the best thing you can get as a flavor. So sunflower, somebody asked here, sunflower or hazelnuts, which is what I had good success with, soybeans. You can basically use it everything that you want. But because it's a fermented food, it will taste different. So if you think that how a goat, sheep, or cow's milk or buffalo milk cheese tastes completely different, even though it's the same but cheesy, you have the same with those kind of ingredients. But there's that only. So what are flavors? Flavors are proteins or amino acids that will reach your tongue and will say to your brain, oh, this is a flavor, this is something tasty, keep consuming it. And umami is the thing behind it. So it's not only, but basically umami are amino acids that stimulates, oh, I want to eat more of it. And some proteins like almonds, we have a lot, and soybeans, we have a lot of amino acids. We release during fermentation a lot of amino acids that is very flavorful. There is a chart, especially if you look for soybeans, for soy sauce. It's a lot of research on which amino acid is the strongest on umami. But if you go down, so you have like soybeans and almonds, which are very rich on tasty amino acids, so to say. Cashew is something behind, but still very tasty. But if you go to some nuts, even sunflower seeds, it's not, or lupin, it's not something that the components, the protein itself, don't have the amino acids that will create a lot of umami. So let's say umami potential. And that's why you can use it, but you want, I'm sticking to those ingredients, one, because it's easier to get, and second, because the umami boost is much better. So in addition to the cashews, almonds, I would have soybeans with coconut milk, because if you only soybean, it's not good. The only problem with the soybeans is that you have first still a very strong soy flavor, which some people don't like, and second is because of the coconut milk. Unless you age it for long enough, you still have that coconut milk taste, which I don't really like. You could add other oils, but the problem is whatever ingredient you're using, there is a possibility of going wrong, in the sense that it might go rancid and just taste weird. So it's a lot of information, but what we learned here is that you can curdle cheese, yes, but whether it will taste good or not, that's a different thing. And on dairy cheese, you can in a couple of days get quite a tasty cheese. So this, in Brazil, we have a cheese like from a state, bit northern state, that it tastes very similar to this. It's very acidic. It's very salty. I love it, but it's something that maybe people in Europe are not so used to, and still has more of a yeasty flavor. And that's not because it's contaminated with yeast, but just because there is a lot of yeast growing, no question about it. But there's also a lot of koji flavor, which is similar to yeast. So if you think about, if you ever tried amazake, which is koji with soybean koji, this is a dried one. It is a rice bean with a mold with it, and then you cook rice and add this, and it will break down the starches, and you have a very sweet flavor from the amylase enzymes of the koji, which will break down the rice starches into sugar, so it's very sweet, but has a very yeasty flavor. And that's not because there's a lot of yeast there growing on. It's mostly because of the flavor of the mold that creates a similar aftertaste. But this is absolutely has yeast also, but it is something between. It's not really cheesy, but it's really not far from it, because cheese also contains a lot of yeasts. So this cheese, it's not perfect. One, because I didn't age it properly. I just let it here, so it's not the perfect cheese. And second is because I could have pressed it to release more water. So there is a couple of things here to talk. So I'm not gonna talk everything right now. It's a lot of topics. Just want to give an introduction. I'm gonna go further with these lives. We're talking a little bit more here, but I want to go further with those live videos and explain to you how to make those cheese, what to watch out for, and how to use koji. Because if you just make this cheese without anything, just with dairy cultures or even with other cultures, it won't be as tasty as with koji, because koji is a enzyme bomb. So it can break down flavors very quickly. So you don't need a lot of koji to make it work. And what I'm gonna, if you live in Europe, what I'm gonna do very soon is actually to sell koji, and that I'm gonna make a new video probably next week. Next Sunday I will do another live, and I will talk about koji more in details what I'm using. But what I want to give you here, what's the takeaway for today, is that you can make cashew curd. So this is not what you're looking. So if you look at my recipe book, there is a cascota, which is cashew ricotta. It's this recipe, but the only difference that I pressed it. And yes, so this is a cashew-based cheese which I need to break it because it's just already broken. And this, if you want to see how it is, there's even a video on how to make it. I will link in the description later. But this is this cascota. This is, if you look actually my YouTube channel, you see I don't have that many videos for the cashew ricotta or cascota. And the only difference here is that I grounded into powder some koji, fermented koji. So it's not the I didn't let the mold to grow like a camembert here. What I did was actually to grow into something else. In my case, is white beans, navy beans, and then I powdered it and then I put it here. So this is, there are two types of koji. I will talk a little bit more next week when I have an announcement of the upcoming products that I will be putting on the website, but this is be part of that. And the same way, so these two cheeses are very similar recipes, but this is almonds, and in almond is much better in consistency because it is a pure curd. So cashew has a lot of starches. I don't have it on top of my head, but I think it's 20% are starches. And starches you can't really get rid of when you're making a milk. You don't really make a milk of cashews in the same way that you do with almonds. And almonds has very little starches, but almonds has a lot of sugars. Not a lot, sorry. It has only a little bit of sugar. But almond, you can make a very nice milk. And then what you have here is a very nice curd. And here you have a pudding with a curd. Not really a pudding. It's not just, I don't cook at higher temperature to get the gelatinization of the starches of the cashews completely. But that helps. So that's why you can have curdled cheese with almond, which is firmer. You can have a curdled cheese with cashews and sunflower seeds, hazelnuts, lupin. They are more complicated to make a cheese out of it. And then you have this big almond baby here, which tastes like a Brazilian cheese because it's a bit more acidic, and that is gonna be the burrata. I didn't do it as properly as I wish, but I'm gonna refine the recipe to publish the coming weeks. And the only reason why those curdled cheese taste nicely is because I added Koji to it, which is a mold, just like if you think a camembert or a blue cheese, there's another type of mold, which is Koji mold, and I fermented somewhere else, so it's a two-step fermentation. I will talk more about it next week to not overload you with information. But you think that I add enzymes to this cheese through this mold, and it will just break down the proteins into amino acids, and those amino acids are full of umami, and some ingredients contain more umami than others. And that's why I'm working with cashews, almonds, and soybeans. Hazelnut is also fine, but it doesn't get a nice curd. And sunflower, I had sunflower or hemp seeds or lupin seeds. I found that they have a very plant flavor, which didn't help a lot with the cheese-like flavor. But they are fine in their own. But I find it a bit more complicated, tricky to sell it as a product. So what do you do from here? So if you want to start playing around and you have access to Koji, for example, you can order online Koji, rice Koji. This is from Japan, but now there is a lot of places that you can make miso. If you're looking for miso making, you're gonna see what Koji is, and you can buy it in some places. If you don't have this, I bought in a Japanese shop here in Berlin. But otherwise, if you live in Europe, you can wait another 10 days or so. I will be putting on Cashewbert online shop also Koji, ready Koji to use on the cheese making. And then you can try to make a ricotta type for a comparison. So a cashew ricotta, cascotta, you can find the recipe on my book, books.cashewbert.com, and the video is here on YouTube. And then if you get the recipe right, and then you just wait a few more days, and then you can start working on a more advanced cheese making, which is this one. And it's not the advanced part is not making it, but caring for it. So there was a question here about how can I see that? Somebody, yeah. So Giga Davy said she makes their own Koji, and that's great, and that's exactly what you might, if you have the ability, if you have the time, and you have the energy to make it yourself. I find Koji sometimes a bit tricky, the way that it's traditionally made, but it is absolutely fine. That's what I did so far. I had like those dried ones to use, but many times I just made myself. I dry it first. I prefer it to dry. I have a bread proofer here, but if you have a dehydrator or something, you can use it, and then you dry it, or you can just make it into a paste and add water, and then while pressing the cheese, you add it, the Koji. But that I'm gonna go into details next week. So next Sunday, same time, I will be back online. If you didn't, I really recommend you, before you start doing anything, go to my book, download, get the cascotta recipe with cashews. It's the easiest one to, you make the cascotta, and then you start from there. And then when I get back next week, and then when I get, Lolek is very excited today. And when I get to the more details, more advanced techniques, then you already got the basics. And yes, I add the Koji, not the spores, because the growing cycle of the Koji, it's usually 2 to 3 days. You really have to go through it properly. So you really need to, you have temperatures that you have to achieve, so it will create enough enzymes that you need, and so on and so on. So that's why you have a chill fermentation process. First you grow Koji into something, and then you use it. And somebody said, oh, don't wait for it to sporulate. I find it like, it's probably true, but I never cared that much, because we use much less than it would be used on miso or soy sauce. Soy sauce is 100% Koji most of the time. Being Koji in that case, on miso you have a lot of Koji plus a lot of rice, but this one is really like just a teaspoon of Koji in this big cheese, and that's plenty. So the bitterness of this sporulation, I don't find it to be precisely strong in this case. But yeah, you have some things to watch out for. So next week, I'm gonna take a look on Instagram. I will be publishing this week more of my experiments, so there will be some lives there also. And plus you have next Sunday another talk like this. It's a lot of information. I will try to break down in a text later in the description, and you can slowly understand how I make cheese and how I use Koji for it. And in about 2 weeks, there will be Koji to sell, like ready to add to your cheese and then your recipe. And then maybe things will be a bit more clear when you see, oh, that's it. It's not complicated. The science is complicated. The making of it is not too complicated. It's tricky though, because you can get this, you can't really see, but it's absolutely wet. And those are the things that traditional cheese also have exactly the same problem, that you need some conditions for it to be good enough. So I see you next Sunday. I know it's a lot of talk, less showing, but because how vegan cheese is, this is all information that I want to put together in the new book. But until then, I want to be able to share and explain to you. It doesn't look that appetizing here, but this is just the beginning, just the introduction. In the end, you are gonna learn a lot through all those upcoming videos. And so I do use rice koji. So if you think about, this was koji that is dried. I blend this in a blender, make it powder, and add to the cheese. That's what I'm gonna do next week. But I want to give you the introduction. Cashew, almonds, koji together make a good cheese. How to go from there is something we are gonna discuss in the coming weeks. So don't miss live next week. Keep one eye out for Instagram lives. I will leave for a few days on the timeline if you miss it, and we are gonna work towards an almond Berta cheese. Yes, and as always, the Facebook group, of course, you can always ask questions there too. So thank you for sharing, for chatting. I know that is a lot for a start, but what I want to achieve is better vegan cheese, and that's what we are gonna discuss in the coming weeks. So until then, have fun making cheese, and speak soon. Ciao, ciao.